The news landed like a thunderclap. In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court struck down the cornerstone of President Trump's second-term trade agenda. The White House erupted in outrage. President Trump unleashed a barrage of furious posts, calling the ruling a betrayal of American workers and a direct assault on his presidency. He accused even his own appointees of being globalist puppets, out of touch with the country's needs. Inside the West Wing, disbelief and anger reigned. This wasn't just a legal defeat, it was a personal and political blow. The ruling dismantled Trump's primary tool for waging trade wars, leaving his America First policy in tatters. Global markets reeled, and uncertainty about U.S. trade policy soared. Trump's allies quickly echoed his outrage, painting the court's decision as judicial overreach and interference with presidential authority. The message: the court had sided with foreign interests over American prosperity, turning a legal setback into a political rallying cry. Behind the scenes, aides scrambled to manage the fallout, forced to reassess their entire trade strategy overnight. The administration now faced the dawning task of salvaging what remained of its most cherished policy initiative. At the heart of the legal battle was the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, or IEEPA. Traditionally, IEEPA let presidents target foreign adversaries in true national emergencies. The Trump administration, however, used it to justify sweeping tariffs on key trading partners like China, Canada, and Mexico. They declared national emergencies over issues like trade imbalances, bypassing Congress to impose tariffs by decree. Businesses large and small sued, arguing the president had exceeded his authority and that Congress never intended IEEPA as a tool for general trade policy. They warned that if any economic competition could be called an emergency, the president would have a blank check to control the economy. The legal fight became a battle over the separation of powers. Was the president rewriting the law without Congress? The administration insisted IEEPA's broad language gave the president flexibility to respond to any crisis. But the Supreme Court now had to decide: how far can a president go in the name of a national emergency? The stakes were nothing less than the balance of power between the branches of government. When the case hit the Supreme Court, tension filled the air. Justices from both sides questioned whether Congress ever meant for IEEPA to let a president overhaul U.S. trade policy alone. Chief Justice Roberts raised the major questions doctrine, arguing that only Congress, not the president, should decide issues of vast economic significance. Justice Gorsuch pressed, could a future president use IEEPA to impose massive tariffs for climate change? The hypothetical exposed the dangers of unchecked executive power. Even liberal justices doubted the administration's claims, pointing to recent rulings that reined in emergency powers. While a few justices sympathized with broad executive authority, the majority signaled deep unease with the White House's position. The tide was turning against Trump's expansive view of presidential power. The major questions doctrine proved fatal to Trump's tariff plan. The doctrine is simple: for issues with huge consequences, the president needs clear, explicit permission from Congress. The court ruled that using IEEPA to impose sweeping tariffs on friendly nations was a radical stretch of the law. If Congress wanted to give the president such power, it would have said so directly. The ruling sent a message: fundamental policy decisions belong to Congress, not the executive acting alone. This decision reasserted judicial oversight and put a brake on decades of growing presidential power. The court made clear, on the biggest questions, the president cannot go it alone. The Constitution puts lawmaking in the hands of the legislature. The Supreme Court's ruling devastated Trump's America First trade agenda. The IEEPA emergency declarations, once the engine of his strategy, were now stalled. Existing tariffs imposed under IEEPA became illegal overnight, erasing a key source of U.S. leverage in global negotiations. Countries negotiating with the U.S. suddenly found themselves in a stronger position as the threat of tariffs vanished. The ruling forced a fundamental rethink trade as a shared power, and Congress holds the primary authority. Trump's vision of unilateral presidential dominance was rejected. The administration now had to rely on negotiation and compromise with lawmakers, a strategic defeat for a president who prided himself on decisive action. The decision also damaged U.S. credibility abroad, exposing the legal fragility of its trade policy. Allies and adversaries alike now questioned the stability of U.S. actions. Rebuilding trust and crafting a sustainable trade policy would be a monumental challenge. The America First agenda was not just stalled, it was fundamentally undermined. The Supreme Court's decision unleashed a logistical and financial nightmare: refunds. Billions collected in unlawful tariffs now had to be returned to American importers. This meant tracking down every company, calculating precise amounts, and processing a flood of refund claims. A task Customs and Border Protection was unprepared for. The sudden obligation to refund billions created a hole in the federal budget, with ripple effects on government spending. For businesses, the ruling was bittersweet. Relief from future tariffs, but a slow, complex refund process ahead. Many had already passed costs to customers, raising questions about what to do with the refunded money. The chaos of imposing tariffs was now matched by the chaos of unwinding them. The refund process could spark new litigation over who is entitled to the money, especially in tangled supply chains. Companies would need lawyers and accountants to navigate the bureaucracy, adding further costs. The decision provided legal clarity, but left years of practical complications in its wake. Even before the ruling, Trump's aides were quietly preparing for defeat. With IEEPA off the table, the White House turned to older, less powerful trade laws to keep its tariff strategy alive. Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows for tariffs after lengthy investigations into unfair trade practices, but it's slow and gives foreign countries more room to push back. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 lets the president impose tariffs on national security grounds, but its use is limited and faces legal challenges. The administration revived Section 232 for new tariffs on metals and other imports, but its flexibility is far less than IEEPA. Even more obscure laws like Sections 122 and 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930 were considered, but these are legally untested and would trigger court battles. The White House's scramble for alternatives revealed its weakened position. The administration moved from a powerful, all-purpose tool to a patchwork of slower, riskier options. The era of swift, unilateral trade action was over. The administration's determination remained, but its arsenal was diminished. The Supreme Court's decision on Trump's tariffs redrew the boundaries of presidential power. By striking down the use of IEEPA, the court set firm limits on unilateral executive action, even in emergencies. Future presidents will have to think twice before using emergency powers for major policies without Congress. The ruling emboldened Congress to reclaim its authority over trade, with some Republicans breaking ranks to support new limits. For America's global role, the decision brings uncertainty, but also the promise of a more stable, law-based trade policy. Allies may find reassurance in a system grounded in legislative consensus, not presidential whim. This landmark case will be remembered as a pivotal moment in the tug-of-war between the branches of government. The future of American trade and presidential power will be shaped by the principles laid down in this ruling.